Welcome to the Board Game Live. I'm Seppy, Chief Game Designer for Fight and Box Games, and on the Wednesday Board Game Live, we discuss the board game industry from content creator and insider perspective. And recently, Gabe, I don't know how much TikTok knows this, but you made the transition from content creator civilian to one of the people in the industry. Like a bandito. Do you want to talk about that really quick? And then we'll bring up today's topic?
Absolutely. So recently, Gen Con was officially the start of my contract with Moco Logistics. But I had been doing some contract work for them before that. But that was like my official start date for like my year contract with them. So Moco Logistics is a shipping and fulfillment center where our warehouse is in Long Beach. So it's about 20 miles from the Long Beach port. And basically we're going to get all into this into a minute. But I met Eric, who's the CEO of Moco Logistics, probably I think it was actually at PAX. No, I met him via Zoom in 2021 or 2022. And I just wanted to cover his game Sabotage. And so I did an overview video for his game, and he liked it, and he used it in some of his ads. And then we just kind of stayed in touch. And then he was looking for help at PAX 1 year ago and was like, hey, could you come work the booth for me? And I was like, sure. And so I worked the booth for him, and I sold a lot of product for him. And he was like, wow, you're a good salesman. And I was like, thanks. And we just kind of...
In the industry, that is called a booth babe. Or in this case, a booth Gabe.
Yeah,
you were booth Gabing for Sabotage.
I was a booth babe or Gabe, however you want to say it. But yeah, I just kind of got connected to Eric that way, and we just always worked really well together. Like there were a lot of different business opportunities that I was able to help him with and connect him with, and I myself, haven't really been in the gaming industry that long. Like I just started doing content not even that long ago, and then now I've made this transition, and I'm really happy to be where I am. So
let's talk a little bit about this. So on the Wednesday Board Game Live, we talk about topics in and around the industry and with people from the TikTok community, content creators and industry people who have put in the work to get to 1,000 followers. And that's sort of the general level of commitment that you have to do. This month's topic is the skills that you need to publish a game. Mm-hmm. And today's specific topic is fulfillment. And that's why I thought Gabe, who is one of us, would be a perfect person to start the topic. Gabe, would you like to start with your definition of fulfillment, or would you like me to?
I can start with mine. Basically, fulfillment, shipping and fulfillment. So you're trying to figure out how to get your game from your manufacturer, whoever you've chosen, into your backers' hands, or if you're doing e-commerce or whatever, into your client who are purchasing your game. There's a lot that goes into shipping and fulfillment, but you need to find you can find a big conglomerate, shipping powerhouse that's been around for a while. You can find a 3PL, which is what I'm part of. Or you can, there are a couple other options that we probably won't get into today, but there's like, world shipping and things like that. But basically it's how to get your game into the player's hands, whether that's from a Kickstarter or GameFound, or if it's just from you selling online or your web platform.
Yes. So fulfillment also is not just a board game specific term. It is about any type of package that you are delivering to other people. Like, for example, like Amazon and Walmart have really made the logistics of getting product from point A to point B their entire business model. And that is the kind of thing that we're discussing on the tiny, tiny scale as a board game publisher. So where do you, when people come to you, what do you think they should already have ready? And then I will also talk about what I think where it starts as a publisher.
Yeah, exactly. So The reality is like you can look into shipping and fulfillment at any point in your process, but ultimately the closer you get to your fulfillment date, the more accurate your price is going to be, because shipping prices every 6 months or so, they go up like probably 5%. But which is like, such a great thing, right? Every 6 months, you're going to be paying 5% more than you did previously. But for me,
except for this month, which
yes.
in March, for a 40-foot container from Shenzhen, if folks don't know, that's on the opposite side from Hong Kong. It was $3,800, more or less. Last month, 20-foot container, which is half its size, was $12,000.
Yeah, and a lot of that,
and that is what we call a shipping crisis.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like, I know we're jumping around a little bit already, but a lot of times that could just be because of the price of oil. Like, it could just be something that isn't related at all to who you're using for your freighting company. It's just like the price of oil went up, therefore your game is going to be really expensive to get here for now. But going back to like, what do I need from someone if they come to me? So
right.
The big obvious thing is I'm going to need your specs. So I'm going to need to know the dimensions of your game and the weight. And I'm not going to need it just for your base game, but I'm going to talk from a Kickstarter perspective to start. But I'm going to need any SKUs that you're going to be offering your backers. So let's say you have an expansion, or there's like a gold coin or a booster promo pack of cards or whatever. All of those things, any details you can give me is important, because at least the way that we do it at Moco is we always do custom quotes for our clients. So rather than just giving you, because there are some companies will just give you a generic like rate sheet, and it will say, this is how much it costs, to ship this package, in the US or whatever. For us, we're going to look at like the dimensions of your game, and we're going to try to make sure we can stack vertically in a box size that is not going to break the bank.
You've hit like 16,000 different things that people need to think that, and we're going to take those apart one by one, Gabe. So first of all, if folks don't know the term SKU, now you know what a UPC is, but right above the UPC, often you'll have the individual code that belongs to the publisher. And a SKU is basically what is the unique item that a person has. And it can go by its UPC, it can go by its unique signifier. But SKU basically means item that would be tagged for separately if you were going through a register.
Yes.
Okay? And before you even decide as a publisher, like what game you're producing, you should have a vision of what kind of box you want to do. And what's so important about today's discussion, which is how this box is going to deliver best and worst case scenario.
Yes.
Okay? So what somebody like Moco, it's Moco, right?
Yes.
Moco Logistics will do is they will have a better relationship with the folks who help deliver packages, any number of the services that a person can use, and that will get them better rates. And then if folks don't know, each one of those carriers have a sweet spot for the type of package and how it's delivered that people want.
Yeah.
We have a question here really quick from Nick from Epic Realms. Do you want to read it?
Says, how do you guys find someone to make and print the box? Is there a universal company everyone uses? So if you're talking about the actual like delivery box, I'm assuming, and not like your board game box, which is be from your manufacturer side. So like we use a site called Uline. And so Uline basically shows us every single box size there is. And it's also going to show us the pricing for that box. And that's why, like, for us, we're like, if you could stay in 3 world, so 12 inches by 12 inches by 3 inches, if you could stay there or under, as soon as you go above that, you're going to see like a big jump in price for the cost of your game to get around. I meant your gaming bikes. Oh, so that's totally different.
All right, let's talk. Like, do you offer an alternative to Uline at Moco?
No, we use Uline. We use Uline because they have the best prices, honestly, for us. So we haven't really needed to look anywhere else. But if you're talking about gaming box, you're talking about like from your manufacturer.
Well, we'll talk about that both too. But folks should know Uline is particularly good at making boxes and selling boxes. But if you look into like where they donate money and their stance on things that you might care about,
Right. Sure.
it is a real issue. You should. Everybody uses them, and like in complete defense, like I've used them and so forth and whatnot. But if there is an alternative, because of the other things that they do, like geopolitically, I would almost always take it, even if I have to pay a little bit more. Like they like Uline's got some serious problems, and you don't take my word for it or my stance for it, but you should definitely look like where you're spending money.
Yeah.
But you cannot avoid it if you're in and around. Like particularly, you always know how much it costs and how quickly you can get it, and they always deliver early on time. Like none of my complaints about Uline are their product or their business model.
Yeah, and also like you can negotiate with them on everything, even like their online prices you can negotiate with. But I do need to do more research, I guess, because I am not aware of their political ties to anything.
Yeah, like considering you're friends with like, and yeah, I would definitely take a look, Gabe, so you're not surprised by that kind of thing. And let people make their own decisions. I like to let people, but you can't make decisions if you don't know like what is going on.
Sure,
but this is also one of those considerations. All right, so we have two questions on top of each other. All right,
Yeah.
So a box, Nick, from Epic Realms for your game is a major cost item for getting the game done. And and usually you work with your manufacturer proper for it to determine, like, for multiple reasons what you want to do. Now, this style of box is called a tuck box, and a tuck box is one sheet of cardboard that is glued over that has its own lid. Okay, and then we of course have the two-piece box like this. And now how they are printed also matters. So, like, this is printed right on the cardboard, where this is printed on a sheet then wrapped onto it itself. So one of the major things, and we're going to talk about this next week with Drew from, because he's now What's It, but he's also Welcome to Boredom, is how the equipment that your manufacturer uses also helps them price optimize for when you're making things of a certain size. And we're going to talk about that later. All right, so hopefully, Nick, that answers your question. And then the next one is, David, how do you decide how many cases fit on a pallet? Is there a case or pallet ratio? You want to take this one, or I will do it?
I mean, ultimately, it's going to be different. You're going to have to do math because it's going to depend on the size of your game. Like the box. If you have a big box game, obviously you're not going to get as many on a pallet. If you have something as small as Seppy's games, you're going to fit a lot more. So I don't know that I can't give you
as small as my games. Look at how big this game is, Gabe.
With the exception.
Don't be such a size queen, Gabe. Like, I feel attacked.
No.
She's right here, Gabe. She's right here.
And she's big. But yeah, so David, in short, I can't tell you, like, you would have to send me your specs and your dimensions. But also, just so you know, from like a 3PL's company, we would not be the ones to do that math for you. So a lot of times what people think is there's a thing called freighting, which is getting your containers from your manufacturer to whoever you're going to use to ship and fulfill. And sometimes people think that they are the same thing. So they're like, oh, you're going to handle our pallets and you're going to do this and that. And it's like, those are actually two separate businesses. Now, we are fortunate enough that we have consistent containers coming in from the Ningbo port in China because of our own game, Sabotage. So we can help publishers by letting them share containers with other board game publishers out there, which is really great because it doesn't get stopped by customs. Where, like, if you can imagine if your board game was sharing a container with like some weird mushroom or some spices from somewhere, like your container could get stopped and delayed. But David, I think what you would need to do is you would need to talk to your manufacturer and you would need to get your exact specs, your exact dimensions for your box. And then you would need to figure out if you're going to either put them in cartons and then put those cartons onto your pallet, or if like, and I would not recommend this, some people don't use cartons and then they actually have to be like taken out one by one on my side. But usually there's an extra charge for that. So I would not recommend that.
All right. So before we jump back to Nick's question, I'm gonna finish David's question by giving these ideas for David to chew on. All right. So normally you have 20 pallets to a container. You have 10 short and 10 tall, and the determination of how many boxes to cases to pallets has everything to do with total volume versus weight per pallet, based on how the total container needs to weigh out. Like a container needs to be consistently weighed through its whole thing so that it does not cause like shifting or other things. It needs to be of a minimum weight, and it needs to be of like a consistently weighed thing, or it becomes very problematic to ship from point A and point B. So if you are filling up an entire container or a 20-foot container, which is a half size, you would think a half size is half as much. It is not. Like a half size, like a 20-foot container is like 80% of a 40-foot container. And this is how people like Sopobatage can offer help to other people who only need 1 or 2 pallets room, so for the whatnot. So there is a rabbit hole for how you do freight. So the word freight and shipping are the same thing. The word shipping and freight and fulfillment starts in another entire thing. Fulfillment starts with warehousing.
Yeah, sorry. I was reading yeah, so like we have, I'm gonna backtrack a little bit because I feel like we're jumping around a little bit, because I think it ties in when we were talking about like, what do you need? What do I need? We talked about dimensions, right? But it's also really important to know where your backers are mostly coming from, if you can, because this is going to really determine what fulfillment center you want to use. So for example, if you know that, let's say 80% of your backers are in the US, and then 20% are maybe like in Australia or Europe, then you probably want to use a US fulfillment center, because we're going to have hopefully better pricing than you reaching out to someone else. However, and we'll get to this in a little bit, let's say it was the reverse and 80% of your backers were from the EU, right? Or somewhere else in the world, and you only had 20% in the US. You can still split up. You can use more than one fulfillment center. If you wanted to, you could say, we're going to use Moco for all of our US packaging, but we're going to use so-and-so in the UK for all of our European ones. And now you're like, well, why would I want to split it up? Why does that matter? We're going to talk about VAT taxes on a basic level in a little bit. But it is something that like a lot of people don't consider. And then you can end up with a lot of angry backers because they're going to get hit with what we call value-added taxes, depending on what country they're in. It's going to change.
Absolutely. This is one of those things. Getting a fulfillment partner helps with knocking this down. Let's talk about Nick's questions. How many hands are involved from original shipping in cases to splitting it to distributors and stores and unpacking and repacking? That number of hands is almost countless, Nick. Like, depending on the process, it can be anywhere from, taking the process from the factory to customs in the departing country, through customs onto the ship, or consolidating into a container, then into customs, and then onto a ship, and then back out into customs, and then unconsolidated or warehoused, or if it needs to be refreighted to another place, if you have multiple fulfillment centers, that's another consideration. And then from there, you get the classic to retailer, to distribution, which is the part that Moco Logistics helps with.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'll be doing overseas freight after the 18th for the first time through a local distributor. Oh, congratulations. It's going to be an adventure. all these factors come down to time and budget. It's true.
Yeah. Can we talk about that
During
for a second?
October. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say for like timing and budget, I think timing is a big factor that people do not think about. And I'm talking about literally like the time in the year when you want to get your games delivered. So as we know, like the year is split into quarters. And when you hear people talk about Q1 and Q4, like Q4 is like holidays. So if you're trying to if you don't think about when your games are getting delivered, and let's just say it happens to fall in Q4, the prices that you are looking at, even if you got quoted a year in advance or like during Q1, that quote will probably have to be adjusted because it is always more expensive to ship during the holidays because everyone is trying to get their stuff at that time. And so one thing that I would think about is not just timing of when you want your packages delivered, because that's going to, depending if it's which is a holiday, it's going to be more expensive, but also like when you're talking to your manufacturer, you have to manage multiple timelines because there's Chinese Lunar New Year where like if you don't match that up with your manufacturer, then your fulfillment center, that timeline is not going to match up either because they close down. If you didn't know this, during Chinese New Year, a lot of all the factories in China pretty much shut down for 3 to 4 weeks. And a lot of us Americans are not aware.
Let's talk about Lunar New Year for a second. The reason that it is 3 weeks is it's 2 weeks for the national holiday, but there's a 25% labor turnover after Lunar New Year every year, if you did not know that. People just do not show up to the job that they had if this is like an Asian-based company. And because they have a new job. Everybody starts the new year with a new lease on life. And when you have a labor force with that much turnover, it's gonna create issues. Like if your job is being manufactured and that manufacturing is split across the New Year gap, make sure you're tightening things up. Like it's a real big deal. That 2 to 3 week gap and training a new like. Who you choose as a manufacturer, who you got, and you need to keep that in mind as well, because how well people treat their people or the conditions and anything also attribute to that turnover. The other one of those that you have to think about is Golden Week, and Golden Week is another national holiday. It's a week off. It just happened. And so that can also interrupt flow in and around, which is obviously perfectly awful for people who are looking for things in and around the Christmas season. And that also drives up prices and slows things down.
Yeah. Like if you want to find the cheapest prices, if you're like thinking about when you want your games delivered, are going to be in the first part of the year. So like Q1 and Q2, basically from January to like April, let's say. Maybe around there. If you get your games delivered, then your backers should not be paying as much for shipping as if they were getting delivered after that in 3 or 4. Now, I wanted to chat just for a second because we talked about what do I need from you out there if you're looking for a quote, and we talked about the weight, the size, where most of your backers are coming from, we talked about SKUs. And like sometimes like I'm also okay with people just sending me their tiers because sometimes that's easier than people giving me like all of these different items. What they will say is this is the base, this is the deluxe, which comes with, this expansion, this is the make it metal tier, which comes with this, and this, because then that also will probably help us save you on pricing because we're going to look for different box sizes for each tier that you're offering.
Let's talk a little bit about pricing models in and around fulfillment next, but we had a question from Maxwell, everybody's favorite game designer. Maxwell, the short answer to your question, you choose your partners based on how much risk that you're willing to take on, how much available margin you're willing to spend on that, a level of confidence. In general, if you are competing on price, price tends to be, I'm taking on more value. I'm taking on more work and more risk. And that is a real internal consideration that you have to do when you're choosing your partners. Like locally, Maxwell, you have a lot of people that you can talk to, and they can tell you about their experiences with individual partners, anywhere from manufacturing to shipping. And so that can give you a lot of insights in, I want to use this person for these reasons. Like another major factor for manufacturing is minimum order count. People often want to think about like games by the number of unit price cost, but you should really be thinking about how many units you think you can reasonably sell and how before you pull the trigger on what size order that you have. And understanding what it does to a title's business model when you can get it all the time, like Kylie from Games Unlimited is thinking about, versus when it is a short run item that you might not see again. Those business models are different, and you have to match up your partners with the business model that you're doing.
Yeah. Now, once you've given me all of this information, I'm going to provide you with a quote. On this quote, depending on who's giving it to you, there might be some, varied differences between like what they look like. But in general, it should basically repeat everything on it. It should repeat everything that you told me already. So it should have, whether it's by tiers or SKUs or however you gave me the information, I'm going to reword it the same way you worded it to me so that you know what we're looking at. It's going to show you the dimensions of the box that we are using, the weight of that box, and then it's going to show you pricing for whatever countries you asked for. Some people are wanting worldwide. Some people are just interested in US and Canada. And you can always adjust quotes too. If you look at a quote and you're like, you know what, I might have a couple people from this random country. Do you mind quoting me for that? And they should be like, no problem, and update that. Also, countries come in groups, obviously. The United States is sort of its own thing, but Commonwealth countries also are, and that's Canada, Great Britain, the UK, or Australia, New Zealand, depending, and so forth and whatnot. So think about that as well. But and then obviously the EU is its own sort of set of things and how it delivers from. A lot of the EU fulfillment starts and happens in France for various reasons. And the port of entry affects prices. And so you should think about that. Now, one of the things that line items for what it's going to cost you, realize that you're going to have a pallet fee. If they're warehousing for you, the very first cost that you have to be aware of is warehousing. And it's going to be anywhere from $15 to $18, depending on where it is, how it's going to, per pallet of your stuff that they are going to charge you every month, like rent for their space. Yeah. The next thing after that is going to be their charge for just touching your package. And then it's going to be how many things you add to put that package. Each one of those items may or may not have a fee associated with it. And then it's going to be their surcharge in and around shipping. Yes. So when you look at things like pallet receiving fees and storage fees, these are separate things like Seppy's talking about. So like what we do at Moco is, since we work with a lot of like indie publishers and smaller publishers, usually we're not going to get more than 3 or 4 pallets from them. Just based on, unless it's like, if they're a bigger company, then sure, we're going to get more. But what we do is we actually don't charge for the first 3 pallets. And then if it's a 4th pallet, then we have a fee for that. And then
very important and very reasonable. Good on you, Gabe.
And then in terms of like, if we are unloading your containers, and this is where I talked about like, are we just taking the pallet off the container and putting it in our warehouse, or do we have to do this like box by box because you didn't have it palletized? And if
that's called floor loaded or no pallets. So you can, if you are in that in between area, you can sometimes sneak into a full container, like a 20-foot container or 40, and squeeze in by having it floor loaded. you will pay a price to get it unloaded if it is floor loaded. And because this is the experience for somebody this is called receiving, that somebody's receiving. The freight person has a trucking person usually, and the person that is receiving at their warehouse, they need to know whether or not they have a loading dock. You need to be able to answer this question when you choose your partner, right? Can you take a non-palleted, and what's the fee and so forth and whatnot. Now, if they take the shipping that way, they need a team that can unload that entire thing in the time that it takes, or you have to pay the trucking company premium hourly rates.
Yes.
Or you have to pay the trucking company to pick up the container after you're done. And that can be 50% to doubling your trucking cost, which is a subset of your shipping cost.
Yeah, it's a whole nother step that you can, if you just get it everything on your pallet, get it palletized, don't do floor load. I would recommend, if you can avoid it, to not do floor loading, because it probably will cost you extra money that you're like, and also there's a higher percentage that your stuff is going to get damaged just because it's
floor loading. You want to avoid it if possible. There are instances when it's unavoidable. Like my jump, like I was already under a shipping crisis. Like Princess is floor loaded, and I'm paying an extra amount of money for the receiving end to make it happen. But compared to like the current price or that monthly price for $12,000, like the small fee was not. Yeah, so you should ask yourself the question: can I fit this in if it's floor loaded, or can I please avoid having it floor loaded if possible? Because Gabe is absolutely correct. If you can avoid floor loading, you should do it. But sometimes you can't, and it's a mathematics game. All right, Gabe, we're going to do the reintroduction because we're in the middle. Hey, everybody, welcome to the live. It's Wednesday. I'm talking with Games by Gabe from Moco Logistics, and we are talking about the skills that you need. I need to slow down and stop yelling. The skills that you need as a publisher to publish games. And today's very specialized, and in a good way, this skill can take you other places and across the world, which is the specific end of logistics, which is called fulfillment. And fulfillment, as we define, is getting your final package, and in this case games, to its ultimate owner.
Yes. So we talked about what do you need to get a quote, and we talked about the weight, we talked about the dimensions of your box, if you have tiers, if you have multiple SKUs, all that information, and then we will generate a quote, what countries you want to get it shipped to, because that's going to determine probably which fulfillment center you're going to go with. And then we were just talking about pallet receiving fees and things like that. And then another thing that is important to ask about, especially because a lot of times you're like, oh, I'm going to include a sticker, or I'm just going to include this flyer, and it won't be a big deal because it's just a sheet of paper. Well, that's called pick and pack. And what you really want to ask at your fulfillment center is, what are your charges surrounding pick and pack fees? At Moco, what we do is we do the first 4 is included in the shipping price. We don't charge you for the first 4 pick and packs.
That's okay. 4 items and 3 pallets, Gabe. You are selling me on your services. Like, that is so good.
Yes, and the reason why you need to consider this, and then we charge for the 5th pick and pack, after that. But the reason this is important is because sometimes you're like, oh, I'm going to spend 50 cents on this sticker because I want to give this to my backers because I'm so happy that they supported me throughout this way. And then someone might be like, well, it's $1.25 for every pick and pack. And then you're like, okay, so I spent 50 cents on this sticker, and now I'm going to spend another $1.25 for every package it's going to go in. And it ends up adding up. And some designers get really shocked. And it can really hurt you where you're like, oh my gosh, now this is this could be an extra $1,000 or more just in pick and pack fees because you didn't think that a flyer was going to cost you $1.25 to get into a box.
Yes, David. This is a critical question. If you can get it by plane, it's small enough, it's one pallet or a pallet, you can do that. It is going to be so expensive per unit, but that has to be nuts. But it is so quick. Like, as long as you're comfortable with that, like, air shipping is a thing. You don't want to do it if you can avoid it, but if you need to do it, it is an option. If you need something quick and you need something now, you can do air shipping. If it's also very small and the air shipping is a possibility. But like board games are small margin. It is very, very, very hard to find out. Like you'll find people air shipping games for Gen Con, for example. Like, hey, I know we made it. We want to have a release. We couldn't get it with the rest of the order, but I feel like it's really important to start my community off right. And so they will airship it to Gen Con, knowing that they're getting a lot of the margin back per sale, right? You could not airship if you are, for example, going straight to distribution with that. That is insane. What is Mondo talking about?
So we may or may not be working with a game with Mondo. We are working with a game with Mondo, but that's for Moco Games, not Moco Logistics, which is the publishing side of the company. And Mondo has created a ice cream game that is not yet released, but will be in the future. So.
I'll look at Mondo doing those things. Mondo's at the op now of being a game developer. It's good that he can continue to get his designs out in the world. The world needs more Mondo. That's fantastic. Andy has talked about we've airshipped prototypes. Yeah, all your prototypes will probably, if they're overseas, end up being airshipped to you in any way, shape, or form. Now, one of the other things about a fulfillment center, and it depends on how granular or how flat rate and how much of the shipping savings are transported to you, also is where in the United States affects USPS and the zones that you cost. Like traveling by zone in the U.S. by United States Postal Service can save you a massive amount of money if you understand who all is in your zone and how to get there. Like, it is ridiculously, that is called Zone 1. Like, people in your immediate, like, I think Zone 0 is your municipality, but anybody who's in your, like, greater state area, Zone 1, like, that is a major consideration if you're a local Midwest person and you have a lot of backers in and around a geographic area. And if you decide whether or not you're going to do fulfillment yourself.
Yeah, I would almost. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Gabe.
I was going to say, I would almost say, like, if you have, like, let's say you have 1,000 backers and they're mostly getting delivered in your zone, I would actually recommend you don't need a fulfillment company to do this for you. If it's local, you could and it's 1,000, it'll be a pain in the butt to print labels and box everything up, but you will save money once you start to deliver, like, zones. We go from California to New York. Once you start getting into those zones that are further away,
7 zones, full, like, 7 or more zones is called Zone 7.
And that's when you want to really think about, like, I should probably get a fulfillment center, because it will cost you a lot of money to do that on your own. Because going back to what Seppy was saying, we have relationships with, like, USPS and FedEx, and we get rates because we're delivering thousands of packages a month, so we get a lower rate to deliver. Where you will not.
They are doing things with the packages that are so professional and so consistent that USPS does not have to spend as much time checking in the packages, worrying about the packages, and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. So the shipping companies not only reward volume, but, like, good behavior. And so Mocha Logistics is lots of good behavior drives the price down.
Yes, and also like the way that we package games are very different than other fulfillment centers. So some fulfillment centers, like Seppy said, shipping and fulfillment is we're talking about board games, but a lot of fulfillment centers are shipping all sorts of products, right? Not just board games. So what we do is because we are primarily shipping tabletop, all things tabletop. So one thing that we do that most of these companies probably aren't doing is like we stuff the corners of all of our boxes. And the reason why this is important is because like let's say you have a game that's £4. If they could bubble wrap it, and that sounds great because you're like, great, bubble wrap. But because it's a heavier package, when the FedEx driver like throws the package into the back or onto the porch or whatever, your corners end up getting dented because your corners of the boxes are not protected. So that's an example of like something that we do that other people are probably not going to do if they're just delivering like electronics or like something else like to that extent.
This is a red flag for your fulfillment center if you find out they are using boxes that are suboptimal for what you're shipping.
Yes,
there are a lot of people that have gotten themselves into shipping problems because their fulfillment center wants to use a workflow where everything is going into the same size box. Mm-hmm. By volume and by weight, if your fulfillment people are not looking to that, then you are paying a premium for what you're shipping. And so hearing Gabe talk about how your what box you're using, despite the manufacturer, what box you're using and how it's wrapped up should be something that you should take very seriously. It's like, okay, I need to know how a person is thinking about my package is one of the reasons why you would choose a partner.
Yeah, and like also we've had people come to us before they go to their manufacturer and actually just have a conversation with us because like going back to like that 12-12-3 size or like a 9-6-3 box, like sometimes people will say, this is right now like what my prototype is, what my dimensions are. And we're like, it's great that you're thinking about your games, but like if you could get your box half an inch like shorter, like you're gonna save this much money. And then they're gonna go, oh my gosh, we have all this extra room at the top of the box. Yeah, we can do that. And then you end up saving money. So I will say, like, if you still haven't gone through your manufacturing and you're still working out details, you can start getting quoted by fulfillment centers. And then like what we do is we Zoom with all of our clients when we review our quotes, because we're talking to you about why we're making the decisions that we're making. So like even for like what Seppy was saying, like they just like the type of box that you're going to get used. Based on the weight of your board game, that's going to determine whether we use a 200-pound box or if we use like a different kind of congruent box. So like if it's 4 pounds or more, we're going to make sure that we're using like a 200-pound box because it's going to be a little bit thicker and it's going to protect your game even more. Where some fulfillment centers, they're like, we're not going to get that box because it's 15 cents more per box. We're just going to get this other one, and there's going to be so much extra room that your box is going to be getting slammed all around. And then
if it's over a certain size, they're gonna the volumetrics, right? Like different fulfillment centers have different levels of minutia for boxes and ordering. You might need special order size boxes, and if someone isn't asking you those questions about how these things are all go down and aren't able to articulate that for you, that's a red flag. Maxwell had asked earlier, like how you pick a partner for manufacturing, for shipping, like people willing to meet with you and explain their process is something that you should consider for who you pick for your partner.
Yeah.
It is worth a lot more of just peace of mind and understanding, and it forwards your skills yourself for the next time that you have another project or if you want to take a step closer to the industry.
And
it is good. Like Gabe, you were selling me on you. Like your whole process sounds fantastic.
And like the reason why we Zoom too is because sometimes we'll find out that there's other things that you didn't even realize you needed help with. So it might be about shipping, but then like Eric also, this is where like every fulfillment center depends on their size and everyone's background experience. Eric, he comes from
and their specialty and their location and their workflow and the type of technology that they have. It's crazy.
And so like for us, like we're Zooming with our clients because we're talking about what we have to offer that other fulfillment centers don't. So like for example, like even though it's not related to shipping necessarily, like Eric's background is e-commerce. So we will talk to them about marketing. And then we will talk to them about things that they need to do for their Kickstarter. We actually create resource guides for everyone that uses us that they can then either put on their Kickstarter page or just send to their backers. That's like frequently asked questions about shipping. We prepare those questions and answers for you. And then we also will like, how should I say, like they'll have to sign an SLA, which is a service level agreement. What we do, our SLA is you can terminate it at any time, but you should always ask for an SLA because that's going to include all the prices that maybe you didn't think about. And read it. Don't just sign it like you do at the bottom of like a copyright thing when you just
one of the fulfillment centers did something predatory recently to a buddy of mine, and you should definitely have an SLA. You should definitely look at it. That's good to hear, Gabe. You are very impressive through this whole thing, Gabe. I think it is absolutely great. Your stuff is buttoned up. So we're at the quarter hour again, and so if folks are late to the Wednesday Board Game Live, we're this month in October, we are talking about the skills that you need to publish a board game. And today's particular skill is fulfillment. How do you get the packages from the people who either bought or supported your project to them? And this is a really thankless topic because if you do it right, people don't notice. But if you do it wrong, the world ends. Like the number one like customer service end of your business as a publisher is fulfillment issues. Like my order's right or did whatever it is. How do you guys check into that process?
Can you say that one more time? Sorry.
Customer service in and around getting your order right. Like how do you guys check into that process?
Yeah, so one thing that we do is, are you familiar with Slack?
Yeah.
So like one thing that we do is once you are our client, we create a private Slack channel for you because it's much faster than email. And so anytime you have anything going on, let's say like you need to let us know about a last minute order that came through or something weird that you can't really explain via email and you don't want to wait for me to look at my emails the next morning, you can just send it in through the Slack. We get alerted right away, and then we respond to that. Another thing we do is like once we receive, we give you 42 to 72 hours of like constant information on like what is happening from the point that we receive it. So this way you're constantly in the loop because that can be a very stressful time for designers to be like, what's going on? Do you have my games? Like, are they out of the trucks? Like, what's all this? What is all going on over there?
All right. So one major thing to think about that we have not talked about, and that is part of this is the data that you are giving your fulfillment center has to be in a certain format and tightened up. And just like the rules of your game, you should have somebody double check it. Like, just because like Kickstarter or GameFound or BackerKit spews out a list for you, understand that there's going to be problems and issues, and to have an understanding on how you work through those with your fulfillment center is a real good, this is something that you definitely need to think about. And so much of that starts with the data that you're getting from the platform that you're using, even if it's Shopify and so forth and whatnot, right? You know, everybody has multiple emails, you know, people have things that happen in their lives. And so data changes in and around and through a project. That is why people have pledge managers at the end, because if a project went like even a reasonable amount of time, which is 6 to 12 months, lots of information changes if you got anything of a certain size.
Yeah, and hopefully the fulfillment centers, like if it's BackerKit or Kickstarter or Shopify, those are big types of technologies that are being used for your list. Hopefully, they should be able to receive that fairly easily. But some fulfillment centers that maybe aren't familiar with Kickstarter or BackerKit, maybe they're just not dealing with a lot of that. That's where a lot of miscommunication can go on, and sometimes people are like, "Where's my package?" And you're like, "We're like, oh, we shipped that out weeks ago," and then you're like, "What?" And then it becomes this whole like headache.
You should be able to get a report from your fulfillment center back like the one that you gave them from BackerKit and whatever it is. And you should be able to look at the person's name, add to spreadsheet, and give them a tracking number. And that should be something that you should be able to do on your own without the help of your fulfillment people.
Which is something, actually, I'll just say this will make us sound good, but we actually send your backers a tracking number when we print your label. So that's something that like we do for you, that not everybody does. So your backers with us, in this case, would be getting like a tracking number right away.
That's good.
Yeah. What up, DG? I'm trying
Yeah.
we still, I don't know, do we want to touch on that? Very basic, very
Yes, we all right. We did individual costs and the models of fulfillment centers being different. We talked about how to choose one, and we did talked about red flags. We talked about location doing individual shipping prices, and that affects the cost to the individual who's getting the package. That then ends up being passed on to you as well, because depending on the business model, it's either a flat rate or it's a percentage of shipping. But now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is VAT and taxes.
Yes. So this is a very complicated area. I'll just go ahead and say that. So we're
gonna give you the very light version of this. Yeah. This is a very deep end of the pool.
VAT stands for value added tax, and in some countries they call it GST. It's goods and services tax. So basically what this is if you can, the US, by the way, does not have VAT, does not have any taxes in the US, but a lot of times in Europe and most other countries in the world. So if
in the US we have state sales tax that you have to pay depending on how many packages you send to that state, or how many sales you have in that state in any given calendar year.
Yes.
And that is also grouped with if you have a convention with them. Like, so if you're going to PAX Unplugged, they have like, hey, here's the form. This is the thing. You're going to have to pay Philly tax. If you do not expect to do that, that won't be a problem. They're going to come for you.
Yes. So when let's say you're a US publisher, you design a game, it goes on Kickstarter, you have people in Europe that back your game. You need to disclose in your Kickstarter whether or not VAT taxes have been thought of. So some people include that VAT tax in the price of their shipping. Some people might include it into the price of their game, but you need to state whether or not you're including that, because what happens is that when a product or any good or service that comes from the US that then goes into customs in Europe or other places in the world, there is a tax that needs to be paid. And if I myself as the publisher did not account for that tax, what happens is that the person receiving that package will get hit with a bill at some point saying, hey, you owe this much for getting this goods and services from this other country that is outside of here. And a lot of backers get upset by this because people don't know about VAT taxes, and it won't be included in the price anywhere. And then they'll get
and you spent 300 euros for the super mini game, and then you spent X amount for shipping, and suddenly German customs says, hey, you need to give me like these many euros or I will not give you your game. And it's substantial. Now, one of the platform you choose has everything to do with your relationship with VAT. One of the reasons we do Pledge Manager through GameFound at Fight in a Box for Conquest Princess and End of the Line is because GameFound as a platform inherently takes care of VAT, like if you were using Shopify in the US, just as tax added on. Like people can see, okay, you've got this thing, I'm paying this shipping and this VAT, and then it is my responsibility to match up that VAT payment and number with their thing. So when it goes through customs, the individual package, when it's sent there, if I'm sending it from the United States, that they know that this person already paid the VAT, and you should give them their package.
Yes, where like platform like Kickstarter doesn't account for at all, and so that's like a big difference between the platform, like Seppy was talking about. Now, this is something where like
the other one is stretch pay. Like sure. People ask, what are the two features of GameFound that make it attractive for people? Mm-hmm. And right now it is stretch pay and VAT inclusive. And those two things, as a publisher trying to manage all these extra tasks, it is a deal.
Yes. And so earlier when I was talking about knowing where your backers are coming from, if most of your backers are coming from Europe and you're a US publisher, for whatever, I don't know why that would be the case, but if that's the case where you're a US publisher and most of your backers are coming from Europe, you should probably look at a fulfillment center in Europe because they will have their own VAT tax number that you. I
know one Kickstarter that is a US company that ended up having 80% of his people from the UK backers.
That's wild.
I wanted them. I want no one from this year. That specific situation has been discussed by me this year. Absolutely.
Well, if that does happen, the reason why you would use a European fulfillment center is because they are going to have their own VAT number. You can like Moco, we don't have our own VAT number for like Europe. We have partners in the UK. We have partners in China that we can utilize to kind of like supersede and kind of get around that a little bit. But like what we're doing right now is we're actually beta testing our global shipping so that next year we can offer that as a service.
Right.
You know, but let's say, so like that's kind of like before what I was. Well, actually, I don't think I said this, but like a lot of times what will happen is we'll have people in Europe that, you know, they're designing a game in Europe and they will only use us for their US fulfillment. And then they will use another fulfillment center for their European fulfillment centers because they have their own VAT tax number. You can get your own VAT tax number, but it's very complicated and probably not worth it unless you're selling a buttload of product.
And your GTS. Like, you realize you need another one of these for the UK. It is something that you should know about. It is something that you need to make sure is addressed. But it is, like Gabe said, it is wildly complicated. And somebody taking this off of your shoulders will make you feel better. And this is one of the reasons why you get a fulfillment partner.
So definitely ask whoever is quoting you, ask if they have their own VAT numbers. And if they don't have a VAT number, ask if they have partners in other parts of the world that can help with this. Because if they have a good relationship with other people in the industry, they should have partners that they can refer you to at least.
All right. So for us, for a lot of our games, and historically speaking, they've been under a certain count, and we have the option with my distribution partner, Atlas Games, to manually do the heavy lifting of fulfilling the first box. So for Conquest Princess, if you ordered it and you're going to get it and you already filled out all of your late pledge stuff, like your pledge manager stuff, the likelihood that I personally packed your game is very high. So you can blame me for that little shit, because my creative director and myself will be going up to Duluth. And this is one of the things that we had to have as an option because of the shipping crisis, right? Like, small people making big games has a lot of issues. Like, I could write a novel on like why this in 9 years of my life is like a question of assistance. Talk about differences between Atlas and Moco. All right, let's talk about it. So Atlas is very Minnesota based and only takes on Minnesota clients or Midwest clients that they personally have an interaction with. So people who've used Atlas are obviously Leader Games, use them forever. Thunderworks used them at one time. Floodgate, all of the local people that you know have used Atlas back and forth, and that's because the owner of Atlas is really good at shipping packages, and he's very excited. He's always been really good at it. It also means that I have the ability to come and go and do flexible things because it's a very personal relationship. Now, Moko is like not like grown up local, like things that you can get away with because your business started in the 90s. Not that like John isn't cutting edge as far as getting your price goes and understand his workflow and eco packaging. John is at the forefront of that kinds of stuff, and so is Atlas Games and Woody. And also he delivers all the things that I would want, like a spreadsheet for all this kind of stuff. But he doesn't do this for everybody. He only does this for people that he has a connection with, or that somebody he quotes that is sort of referred to. Where Moko is gonna work with you and consult with you from the inception of your game through it. Like, John does not have time for that.
Yeah. And I guess, well, we only have a few minutes, but I don't know. I'm trying to think. The only other thing that I was like, we probably don't have too much time to get into that is we didn't really talk about drop shipping, which... Oh,
yeah, let's do it. Let's talk quickly. We can go over a little bit of it. Talk to me about drop shipping.
So drop shipping is another thing that you can totally look into. Personally, I would say to stay away from it, but that's just my opinion. Only because, like, drop shipping, when you think about, like, if you hear, like, Alibaba's shipping company or something like, or Alibaba, whatever that, I can't remember what that, Ali Family or whatever it's called. But basically, if there's, like, a product that they don't have on hand with them, someone orders it, so then they notify, maybe it's with your manufacturer, hey, this person in this part of the world just bought this product, then they're just going to go ahead and take that parcel as is and kind of like send it out to different parts of the world. Sometimes people are like, oh, this seems like such a great option because I can get stuff all over the world whenever I want. But it's touching even more people's hands. It's getting thrown around a lot rougher, and the chances of it getting lost are much higher than if you use the fulfillment.
It is a risk-reward thing. You're throwing out a greater blanket, and there are more possible things that could go wrong. There are no silver bullets. Every system that you have is going to have shortcomings and advantages. And normally, like, it's where you are comfortable with your business model, and your project model to do that. I recommend, as a publisher, for first-time publisher, finding somebody that you can feel confident in and learn from. Because ultimately, if you like this and this end of the business, this is how you either create partnerships that last you the lifetime, or you pick up the skills that you need to take internally that you can improve your margin. Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. Gabe, we had a super meaty discussion.
We got a lot out.
You are excellent at this. This is great. I think you did an amazing job letting people know what the difference for Moko is and how they are doing it. It's nice that it's board game people fulfilling for other board game people. Things that people really should be thinking about so that they're not surprised. This is the first 4 items you do not get upcharged for, and the first 3 pallets you don't have to worry about. Those are great things. Consulting about packaging sizing is amazing advice. People should really think about, like, and if you do not know what size box your stuff fits in, you should take the time and do the exercise for yourself. So, for example, this is end of the lines prototype fitting in a processing box. And we just took the components for it and see if we could fit it. If you're worried about, like, I don't know, you have all of Board Game Geek to help you figure out what is the appropriate size box based on cost and components. Because Board Game Geek lists all the components that go in the box, the weight of the box, and the shipping size too. So you can figure out from that what you need to start your guesstimate from.
Yeah. Yeah, and talk like try to have those conversations with people at conventions if you're there, or here on TikTok with people. Like I said at Moco, we meet with you via Zoom even before you're a client to explain what we're gonna do. But like have conversations, and like I always tell people, like when we're zooming, I'm like, if you don't know, like 'cause a lot of them are first time designers and they're like, I just don't know what I don't know yet. And just hopefully you trust the fulfillment center enough to say that, and they don't like take advantage of you, because that could be a thing that could be terrible. But
You should ask other people about their experience with people, asking them to like, hey, can you refer to me to somebody who's used you, and I can talk to them about their experiences. Usually, if they can't do that, that is a red flag.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And like it's gonna be different for everyone. Like for example, I sent an email out. I felt so bad. I felt so dumb. I sent an email out to someone that I was looking at to like bring in as a client, and I accidentally sent the wrong name, put the wrong name in that email, and I sent it to this person, and I was like, oh, because then they responded, and they were and like rightfully so, they were like, this doesn't seem personal, and you didn't even use my right name, and this and this and this, and I was like, oh my God. I sent this huge apology, like, and I apologized to them via email and everything, but I'm like, sometimes that's all it takes too, for someone to be like, oh yeah, Gabe, oh yeah, he sent me, or just didn't have a good experience. But
all right, so also understand, and we're going to talk about this next week, what is failure rate? Like, we have humans interacting with humans, interacting with machines, interacting with humans, and there is going to be a certain amount of failure, and people flip out. And like first time designers, you should have an expectation that your manufacturer probably has a 2% fail rate. Like every 100 boxes that they're making, 2 of them got something wonky about them. And so your fulfillment center will also then have to deal with, hey, how do I get parts or new games to people? And, with the data that we're talking about, understanding how to work through the failure process without ruining anybody else's life is a survival skill for the industry. Because at the end of the day, though this is a legitimate business doing things legitimately, we are spreading joy in games. And remember, you want to continue to spread joy to the people that you choose as partners and to the people who you are getting games to.
Yes, well said.
Gabe, you're an amazing guest yet again. Thank you so much for making time this Board Game Publishers Skills Month. We're now in the wrap up. Where can people find you? What can they expect from you next? Where can they see you next?
Yeah, so I'll be at BGG Con in November, and then I'll be at PAX U in December, and then most of the other conventions throughout the year. But if you are interested in Moco and you're a designer, no matter what stage of the process you are on, you can go to mocoshipping.com, and you can go ahead and just submit a claim there, and we will reach out to you and Zoom with you and begin to just start talking about what are your needs. And if you're like, I don't know what I need, then just say that, and then we'll talk about it.
And you will learn a lot of the things about the things that you do not learn, and it will either make you very excited about all the things that you can maximize in a Eurogame sort of way, like to be the most optimal. And if you treat that like an opportunity, you'll go far. Thank you so much. All right, so for Fight in the Box, obviously fulfillment for Conquest Princess is coming up. If you haven't late pledged yet, End of the Line is in that right now. It's super duper fun. Gabe is a fan. Thank you so much for giving it tabletop, Gabe. It caught on to Curvin, Drew, and Chris as well. So that there's a chain of love that happened for that. The big news is if you got a review copy of End of the Line during Origins, that was really successful for us. We are going to have review copies for our next title that we have announced yet at PAX Unplugged. And so we are collecting content creators who had experience with us, and we're going to give them the fanciest prototype that they have ever been handed. Gonna be bonkers. Of course, obviously, knock on wood, if the shipping crisis doesn't make my life hell, we will also have, for the first time, it will be the debut for Conquest Princess at any convention. It will be the big release. Retail release for that is also November 8th. We will have a release party for that locally on November 11th at Tower Games if you want to learn how to play the game from us. So that's all that the shenanigans that. Otherwise, come back next week and I will be continuing Skills for Board Publishing Month with manufacturing, how to choose a manufacturer, the questions you should ask your manufacturer, what are red flags with a manufacturer, and what are you actually paying for?
Yes, and Drew's such a great person for that, so I'm really excited.
Yeah, like also, this is a great example of people starting out as content creators or starting and then taking a step towards the industry and realizing that they have a lot to offer the industry. Gabe, you have so many talents and so many skills, but the game industry then will give them love, and it is great to see people becoming part of the industry and thriving. So hopefully both you and Drew are having a good experience becoming one of us.
Yes, we are. I am. I can speak for myself. But
absolutely. All right, so final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Pretty much you're going to need more information than you realized. You're going to know a lot less than you thought. But it's all going to be okay as long as you talk to your friends, talk to other people in the industry. And it's a leap of faith, but you're going to learn so much, as Seppy said, through it. And ultimately, like, it's going to feel like such an accomplishment. Like, I know Seppy, I can't speak to this because I'm not a designer, but I talk to designers when their campaign closes and when they finally get their games out, and that feeling of like the game getting to your backer, and then you see them start to post pictures like, my game came today, I got game mail, da 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 da, like that feeling, you know, it's just, I haven't felt it personally because I'm not a designer, but I know from secondhand experience just how wonderful that is.
When our fans see our games in the wild in places that I've never been, that is usually when I have that specific feeling. Like, I don't remember selling to that person. Like Gabe, you see me. I work the hustle at shows, right? And it's one thing if it's somebody that I have a relationship is carrying it at their store and all this other kinds of stuff. But when it's somewhere out in the wild, they're like, this is the title. Like, I needed to have mouse, cheese, cat, cucumber in my store or squirrel that. Like, and I'm like, I'm not. But absolutely. What Gabe said, like, you should not only survive your dream, but thrive in your dream, and finding people who have the skills and who can help you out is such a major part of that. All right, Gabe, thanks again. And everybody, I know we went a little bit late, but it was an amazing live. See you next Wednesday at 3 o'clock for Drew and manufacturing. Otherwise, stay safe and have fun.
See ya, thanks.
Bye, everybody.